Sherry, I appreciated last week you sharing the difficult response of, I don't really know what it is that I want to do for Jesus, and sometimes it's tough to think about that. So can I put you on the spot, having a lot of weeks' notice, would you like to build on that, having a different and more time to think about it? What do you want to do for Jesus? And then, are you doing it? And if not, when will you know that you're ready to?
Still working on it. Processing what I enjoy doing, but I don't know that's where ultimately that will be. I enjoy singing and worship in that way. Whether that's where I'm supposed to be serving, I don't have a clear answer on that. I know in the past I worked with children, and at that time I loved it, but I don't know that that's where I want to be again, unless the Lord says, okay, that is where I want you to be. So it's a lot of different things floating inside my head.
Okay.
I know He has a purpose for me, but I'm not sure exactly what it is.
Okay. So let me interrupt there, because the question isn't, what do you think Jesus wants you to do for Him? Right? This is a different question. And this question is, if you had, and I didn't embellish it this way, but I want you to think about it this way. So let's come back to this after this grand preamble, Sherry. So if you had the opportunity to do anything for Jesus, what would it be? And it sounds like from at least your response, you're not doing that. But then what would that be? And then how would you know when you're ready for this thing that you'd want to do?
Can you say that again?
Yeah. Let me put it differently and make it a little bit more Disney. If you were a genie and you could make any wish you wanted to come true, what would it be that you would wish to do for Jesus? And when would you know that you're ready to do this thing that you would wish for Jesus?
I would love to do music. As far as when I would know I was ready, I guess I'm waiting for someone to say, you're good enough, or that's what you need to be doing. As most people who know me know that I kind of second guess myself and not always sure, but it brings me joy when I'm doing stuff like that, but it's not about me, it's about Him, so it's really what He wants me to do.
Well, sure, but especially because we've learned over a great deal of time that a lot of us struggle with listening to what the Lord is saying to us, right? So it's going to be difficult for us to all of a sudden now decide, oh, we're hearing from the Lord, or because we kind of talked about this a while ago. If we wait for the Lord to talk to us, some of us may actually, you know what? It's funny. We didn't talk about this. I talked about this in a small group here in Texas a couple weeks back. If we wait for the Lord to tell us, if we wait for, how do people say this? We wait for, there's a phrase Christians use with this, and I forgot what it is. It's like the Holy Spirit to move. If we wait for that, frequently we will be sitting on our keisters the entirety of our life.
Say that again.
You can say that again, Sarah?
Spiritual keisters. I just wanted
exactly. We'll be sitting on our butts because we don't know really what it is that the Lord sounds like, because remember, Elijah thought he knew what the Lord's voice sounded like, and it wasn't. It was something altogether different. So when we wait, sometimes we wind up waiting an entire lifetime, sitting on the bench, unable to get into the game. So, yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Well, I might be jumping ahead, but a question that I would add to this is, how can Interlink help you get there?
Yeah. Well, certainly certainly the retreat that we're doing next is going to be hopefully that fulcrum that helps to push you into the fray of, oh, I guess there's more to my life and my gifting than what I thought there might be. And so there might be other places where I'm either designed or I have a passion that I never perhaps knew existed. Or I've always wanted to do that. I just never thought I was the person to do that. And I'm not talking about necessarily the Lord putting you in place. I'm saying you finding out about yourself.
Well, if I was a genie, I would want to be able to fulfill the Great Commission, because that's where Jesus' heart is.
Yeah.
And the gifting, I mean, that's how we might serve our church body and even out in the community. But the true grit is telling people. So how do you know when you're equipped?
Yeah.
New believers go out and they can win souls. So we are equipped. We just don't want to admit it, because then we got to do something.
So Diane, you're really hitting on certainly the fringes of this. So the question is not when does one know? When will you know? When will Diane Scheid know that you're ready to fulfill the Great Commission?
I already know. I just don't do it because I'm.
Oh! No!
That's how we like it, right? Oh, I'm not just quite ready. I don't have this part of it. But once I get that part, I'll be closer. I just don't feel like when Gene says he feels unequipped, and I'm always looking at Gene, while he knows the Bible, he can really come through with those, biblical knowledge that people need to hear, because they say, that's the best way to answer someone is with scripture. And I'm always like, well, I have that answer when I need it. So I know I'm ready. I was ready the minute I was, accepted Jesus into my life, but me.
So it's a wonderful answer, Diane, and you've kind of done what Steve intuited. You've opened the door to where we're going to go in some regard with this. So I want to remind us of something I learned years ago from Steve J's brother Mark, and it's never left me. In fact, I use it regularly. And then I want to bring that forward a little bit. If you remember, Steve's brother Mark, Steve Jenkins' brother Mark, is a pastor. Nope, probably don't remember. And he came and he presented to us.
Preston, wait, you're muted.
We tripped.
And Steve J's brother Mark came to visit us years ago. And he presented one Sunday. And one of the things that he shared that has remained with me ever since he shared, because it was an eye-opener. It was something that I thought was so remarkable. I had to mention it not only to Steve's brother, but I've mentioned it to Steve over the years. But I also use it when I think today about teaching our interactions with believers. And here's what he said. And I found this fascinating, except now as I've become I don't want to say an elder. Now as I become a more mature believer, I get this differently. And it directly borders on Diane's answer, which is this. When Steve's brother would go on missionary trips internationally, and they would go into, we got Steve K here, so he might be able to ratify this as well. So when they go to mission and they have people become believers, the funny thing about this is it's really cute and it's really very sexy that the missionaries go and make believers. But, right, and this is sometimes what we state people don't recognize or don't think about, but the missionaries have to leave. So then, who becomes the elder? Well, the elder is probably the first person who became a believer in that particular place. And they've been a believer for like maybe a week, 2 weeks, a month, and tag they're it. So what makes them more qualified to be an elder than Sherry or Diane, who've been walking with Jesus for, 20 years? Hey, PK, am I close to that? Am I close there?
Yeah, absolutely. In some contexts, there's so much there because you got to balance that with Paul saying, don't lay hands too quickly. And yet when he left Ephesians, he said, go appoint elders. And it had only been a couple years, right?
Right.
And at the same time, there are still these standards that we get intimidated by, but you look at them, they're actually kind of bare minimums. It's like, it basically boils down to have only one spouse and don't be an idiot. That's really what it boils down to.
That's why it's so hard.
Yeah, that's why it's hard. That's why it's hard. But I want to add something as a missionary that I was thinking. I was thinking about this. If you could do anything for Jesus, and of course, Great Commission and all that stuff. I enjoy doing hard things, like going to the mission field, a place like Nepal, do it for Jesus, but I kind of do it on my terms, okay, despite how cool it looks or whatever. So I have a high school reunion coming up next year, and my first thought was, if I could do anything for Jesus, man, I would love to share Jesus with my class. And immediately as I'm thinking that, the fear kicks in, because that's too close to home. There's too much opportunity for rejection. I shouldn't care. I haven't talked to some of these people in 30 years, right? But that old teenage insecurity comes up, different things like that. Now, this is where it gets tricky. I tell myself, well, if the Lord leads me to do it, I'm certainly going to do it. That's a problem, right?
That's the phrase I was looking for earlier. I couldn't find. The Lord leading. Thank you.
Yes. Lord doesn't need to lead. He commanded it. Right? And he already said, I am there with you. I'm in it. So really he's saying, I've already led. I'm just waiting for you to catch up.
So Steve, I very, very much appreciate you sharing it that way, because one of my points of contention for years about missionary work is that we are comfortable having it occur not where we are, because there's little to no accountability if you, who I give money to, are going to do missionary work 2,000 miles away. But the missionary work that we should be on is the one that's the shopping store, is the one that's the rental facility. It's the Uber. It's the library. It's the school. That's where we're supposed to make our impact as we go. And we as Americans, but maybe we as Westerners, have gotten very comfortable that the work of evangelism happens over there, happens for those ignorant people whose villages we need to prayer walk around, stuff like that, as opposed to there's folks every day you guys are brushing shoulders with who right now have no saving knowledge of the Lord Jesus. And Diane's right. Sherry is talking the real life struggle. Diane's talking the scriptures, which is we have everything we need. The other thing that Diane shared is this. New believers do this way better than veteran believers. And if veteran believers do this well, it's because of the thing that Steve mentioned earlier, purposefulness and intentionality. That's why, because guys, it's like that Earth, Wind, and Fire song, After the Love Is Gone. And for some of you who've been married for a while, you understand this. When we're young and hot and there's lust and passion, you can't wait for the things to happen because there's lust and passion and excitement. And then, after about 4 days, I'm just exaggerating, I'm used to it, right? And so I'm saying that to say it gets real easy for the passion and stuff to die out if you're not intentional about date night. If you're not intentional about loving, and this is going to sound crazy, loving each other as mom and dad more than you love your kids, right? Because the reason you have your kids is because of you and your wife, or you and your husband. So if you're not intentional about maintaining those, it gets very easy 5, 10, 20, 30 years later to go, well, we've been married for 80 years. And it's very meh. No excitement, no passion. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, there's a shift that has to occur from receiving, taking, to giving and pouring out. And the irony in that in a marriage, right, is that you're pouring out and then you end up receiving that. But to bring that into our Christian walk, at least for me in the early days as a teenager, we go out on mission, we do things. That was awesome. We were with friends. I got a lot out of it, and I wanted to make sure that I was there doing stuff because of how it filled my tank, so to speak. And then when those things started not to fill my tank, I had to make a decision. Is this about me getting something out of it, or is it about me giving, pouring back? Am I making sense? Am I resonating?
Yeah, but I'm gonna disagree with you a little, Steve, and here's why. Sometimes covenant relationship, which is what we have with Yahweh God, right? And what we have with our spouses, if we have done it correctly, as opposed to the Western contracts. Here's what that really means. Sometimes I pour out a whole lot and get absolutely nothing back. And that should be okay.
Right.
So I appreciate Steve's most desirable position, which is I give and I get something back. But in a covenant situation, sometimes you have to give, and give. And there's number one, there's nothing that comes back. And here's the other crazier thing. There's no expectation of getting something back. Because in that relationship, the key is you care more about the other person than you care about you. And that is a very, very tough position for Westerners to be in.
Yeah, that's right.
And so that's why, it's real easy for Brother Steve to think about his high school reunion and then get butterflies and say, I don't want to do this, because there's no guarantee he's going to get anything out of doing that except folks going, I never liked that guy back in high school. But the Lord can set the supernatural table for that, and you guys have heard it often enough. I won't tell it again today, but certainly I've been in that position Steve was in, and the Lord opened that up because somebody approached me and thanked me for being a believer, and that opened up the door during my high school reunions to say, okay, I guess I'm the Jesus guy, kind of. So let's talk. Let's dance. Let's have some good times together, and then let's talk about Jesus. So, Brother Steve Jenkins, what do you want to do for Jesus? Are you doing it? And if you're not, how do you know that you're going to be there?
I don't really like your question. Wow. I don't like the way you phrased it, and here's why. It doesn't matter what I want. I look at it from the standpoint of Jesus is King of Kings, right? It only matters what he wants. The problem is when I get to answer that question for myself, that's when I get into conflict between my flesh and my spirit, his spirit, really. Because if you had asked me in my flesh what I want to do for Jesus, it would be, well, as little as I can get away with. I mean, that's just being honest. I mean, I think a lot of times we're all kind of like, we're all kind of like a certain figure in the Bible where we're just trying to ignore what we've been called to do. Let's see if you guys can guess who this is. And so we're just trying to do our day-to-day stuff, hiding out somewhere, brushing some weeds. And then even when we get asked to do something, we're kind of like, are you sure? Maybe you could show me. If this happens, then sure. Or if this happens, then sure. Or if this happens, then okay, then that's you want me to do it. So I think that sort of is a good summarization of what we struggle with every day. So, and what does he want to do? Well, want us to do? Diane's already said it. We already know what that is.
So now you mentioned you struggle with that every day. Are you struggling with that every day?
Am I struggling with that every day?
Yep.
I mean, I don't know if it's a wrestling match every day, because most days it's like, I've got to work. I've got to do this. And I work in a situation where I have certain set goals I have to reach every day, and I don't really interact with other people to do it.
Ideal introvert's job.
Yeah. So I guess it depends on the day and what I'm doing. Now, sometimes on the weekends, sure, because I'm going out and I'm about and sometimes I see an opportunity and I don't do anything. Sometimes I don't recognize the opportunity until I'm out of it because I'm so busy doing the things that I'm doing. So maybe it's not an everyday struggle because I'm not struggling.
Okay, but you're kind of on autopilot. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate the candor and the honesty of the answer. Sister Sarah Jenkins, what do you want to do for Jesus? And are you doing it? And if not, how are you going to know when you're ready?
So you're probably not gonna like my answer because mine is I'm working on building my relationship right now with him. And that's what I want to do. And I know that's where I am because of the things I'm doing.
Okay, well, let me ask a obvious question about that. How long is the relationship work going to need to have investment?
That's a good question, and that I don't know. Because I'm trying to figure, the way I'm looking at it is that if I can build that relationship stronger and better than what it was, then I'm going to be where I am ready to do what he wants, which is, just like Diana said, to go out and do the Great Commission work. But right now, what I wanted to do for him was to build that relationship, which is what I know he also wants from me, is to get that part down pat, and then I can go from there. So I don't think you'll like my answer, but that's where I am.
No, it's not that I don't like your answer. I appreciate the truth of the answer because the question thrown back is, well, when do you think Jesus will say that you've had enough time to develop that relationship?
He's probably telling me that now, but I don't feel confident.
I appreciate that. I want you to hear what your answer is, because I'm gonna move into something I was actually gonna wait till we went through the room to do, but I think I appreciate what you're saying, and so let me give a little bit of we're gonna try to.
I have some. Yeah.
I'm gonna try to wrap a lot of this up by the. Oh,
Ashia wants to say something.
I want to say something about this. I keep like with I want to share about about this actually as I'm hearing from Sherry, and then you're like I'm thinking about this like the Bible also in the Bible Jesus said 70 people 2 by 2. So when we are, for me also, like sometimes I don't know where God is calling me, and so just like Sherry said, I like to work with Sunday school. I like to work with youth. I like to do this and that. So sometimes, but at the same time, I feel like if few people tell me like, oh, you have this is the gift you have. I think I see you, and like and then just like when I work with the Sunday school kids, I know they are enjoying, they are accepting Christ, and that feels me like I'm very excited. Oh wow, God is using me.
Fruit.
Yeah, fruit. So I'm thinking is here, according to everybody's saying is like actually we need peer up. Actually, sometimes when I cannot do it alone, if we peer up together, we can help each other. Just like Steve shared about like we're going to mission field because there's everybody doing it.
So you're saying for confidence, right?
Yeah,
You have a
confidence
partner.
and help each other to grow, and that way we know like now how can we help each other. So that's my thinking, but I don't know.
And that I think she's saying is the answer to the confidence problem. I know when I did my first missions experience at 14, my goodness, to Mexico, I am still confused. I'm not sure if I was a believer or not. I might have been, but I'm not sure. But I was so blown away by what God was doing. And then I very much literally accidentally led someone to the Lord. And that ignited a fire in me. I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea what God wanted at that point in time. My answer was, oh, go back. Wait till the next year and go back. Nothing happened that year. Went back, and it built from doing it. Does that make sense? Till finally, God said, why don't you do more of this? And he called me into full-time ministry from doing that same thing once a year that I would wait for. And then it started trickling into, my daily life to the point where I just started sharing with anyone who would listen. But it started from the doing. For me.
I like Sarah's answer because it's really honest. One thing that has been illuminated to me a little bit in my prayers is I fervently pray for my family and friends. And as I'm praying for them and hoping that he brings somebody in their life that can have more influence than me, I've been feeling like yes. And that's how I feel about everyone. So it's like you want something, and yeah, so do I. But I want it on a grander scale, and you need to get on board with me. So that's just something that's come across in my prayers. As fervently as I pray for my children, and I want them to be saved, that's how our Father feels about us. That's why he celebrates when one comes to him.
So I want you to think about some of the discussion we've had this morning. I want you to think about Sherry's answer. I want you to think about some of Diane's answers. I want you to think about what Steve said and what Sarah just said. And I want you to, if you will, I want you to think a little bit back. This is not the history lesson. I don't know if we'll have a chance to get to here today, but I want you to understand, if you can, based on our conversation, some of the difficulties. And maybe this will lend a little bit of insight to you considering teenage maybe adult, but perhaps teen Joseph and teen Mary. Now, they were in a culture and in an era where covenantal arrangements were made by families prior to maybe them being old enough to even understand what that was. And let's call them, for the sake of contemporary, for a sense of contemporary understanding, arranged marriages. Folks, in an arranged marriage, you almost have to do what Brother Steve described, Brother Steve K, is you've got to start doing, because sometimes the feeling doesn't come until later. Sometimes the confidence doesn't come until later. Sometimes the knowing and relationship doesn't come till later. But in a covenant and in an arranged marriage, you've got to start doing. So let me pause there, and if you've got questions or if you need me to clarify, go ahead and position yourself. Does that make sense? And thus, folks, the Holy Spirit enters into a covenantal relationship with us. The Lord Jesus, that's kind of what Yahweh did in having Jesus do what he did to glorify Yahweh God. And so his covenant was he gave for us. And even though we don't understand it, what we say that we're supposed to do is that we're giving our all for him. And yet we're encumbered by, I don't really feel it. I don't have confidence about it. And thus what happens is we just sit. We sit dormant. We sit in some ways impotent because I don't feel it. And let me ask this other question, and let's see if you've got an answer to this, because this will be fun. Do you enjoy more being right or doing what's right? Do you enjoy more being right or doing what's right?
Can it be a toss-up? I'm just saying, sometimes I like to be right, and just ask my husband, and sometimes I like to do the right thing, but it's kind of a toss-up, if I'm being honest.
Hey, Sarah, and thank you for that. Let me weigh in and then have some of you other some of you other folks weigh in on this. I will suggest that it's less of a toss-up. I will suggest very strongly that more often you like being right than doing what's right.
That's probably true. Don't say anything, Steve. That's probably true, because I can be obstinate when I want to be right. And I mean, I do the right things, right? But if I'm in discussion with somebody, I want to have the last word and I want to be right.
Please look at Steve. He's covering his mouth up with both hands.
Am I being honest, Steve? Okay.
So, Sarah, you answered the question, but this question wasn't really directed just to you. This was directed to all of us. And Ellen and I have had an encounter this week that proved this postulate. And it really, I would tell you, I'm using very kind language and saying I'm suggesting that. I think I'm very confident that most of us Westerners, if not Americans, we would rather be right or feel right than doing what's right. And let me give you an indicating phrase, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of a story, an account that happened for Ellen and me this week that illuminated this for us. When you approach a situation and the thinking or the phraseology is this, I know, but, that already means you value more being right than doing what's right. I know, but suggests I know what's right to do, but I'd rather be and feel right. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. So our son and our daughter right now are going through some challenging interpersonal times. And part of that is based on their life choices, their life decisions, and some of those things. And it escalated to the point so severely last week that Ellen wanted to get involved and reached out to our son to say, you need to go and support your sister. You're her brother, and you and she love each other, and you need to go and support your sister. And he had a variety of arguments and debating points that said, she's this, she's this, she's this, she's this, she's this. And at the end of the discussion, his mother was able to say, yes, even though that may exist, the right thing for you is to go and support your sister. And his answer was, I know, but. I know, but. And so, unfortunately, in our family, this is maybe Sarah and Steve have their own fun dynamics in their family. In our family, we have a whole bunch of know-it-alls. And so, different people at different times are the chief know-it-all. Right now, Miles is the chief know-it-all in our family. And sometimes when you have know-it-alls, it's very, very difficult to convince them that it's less important to be right than to do what's right. And so, in the blatant face of my son having a confrontation with his mother who says, you need to do the right thing, you know the right thing to do, he still ended on the point, I know, but.
I think you can be so ensnared by wanting to be right that you actually think you are doing right.
Well, Jerry, you're not wrong about that. The challenge is, though, when you say I know, see, that then suggests that you're not enamored with being right. You know that you're wrong. However, it feels best for me to remain in my position, even though there's something better to do.
I think because we want them to deal with consequences. A lot of times we don't want to support somebody because we feel like they did the wrong thing and we think there should be consequences, and it's hard to put that aside because you know there's going to be consequences. They're already dealing with them. It's, we're just a mess, but we don't want to get on we don't want to give them the easy street So we're conflicted.
Well, I could say you could flip that too. For an enabler, they're going to want to rush in and do something and make it all good. And then you tell them, say, look, they need to pay some consequences for their own behavior. I know, but I mean, that's more my side of the family, you know. So it can be both. It can go both ways.
And guys, my apologies to you. I gave you an interpersonal scenario. I just gave that to you to say that some of the realities that we look to teach and the principles we look to teach, they make themselves present in our lives on a regular basis. And so I had shared with Ellen, I was going to use this to talk about discipleship this week. Don't get bogged down by, because what we're talking about right now is not you interacting with somebody else to do for Jesus what you would want to do. We're talking about you interacting with you. You interacting with you and going, I think I've heard enough sermons that say I'm supposed to go and make disciples and baptize in the name and teach them to do all he commanded. I think I've learned how that's what I'm supposed to do. So the question gets to be, that's what I'm supposed to do. And if I'm honest, then the other question gets to be, how am I not doing that? And then if the answer gets to be, well, see, already when I start, I'm about to justify or rationalize why I am doing what I'm doing rather than doing what I should be doing. Well, I just don't feel like it. Well, I need to make more money before, you guys know these, I'll give you a few. I need to make more money and establish my career before I get married. I need to establish my career and buy a house and put down roots before we have kids. I need to know more about philosophy before I take a philosophy class. See all of those things? That's working with me to say I need to get and achieve a certain standard before I do the thing that maybe if I just did it, then that's the right course to be on. Now, I gave you some scenarios. Those aren't always 100%. Those are just different ones. Different situations that characterize, I know, but I know the right way to do, but I'm right in being this way.
You know, that can change day to day.
Yes.
The answer is, I know, but, and then the next day the answer is, okay, I'll do it. But then you might go back to, I know, but, you know, sometimes it's just as we go about our day and the people that we interact with. Again, if we're not always, what's the word I'm looking for? Intentional. Then it just, you know, like I say, you're just kind of going about doing your own thing and you don't even really see the potentials. And there, I mean, not every interaction is going to produce a encounter, but if you're not looking for them, they're never going to. But I get it. I mean, there are times, very much so, I really should have done that, but I don't know. I'm just not feeling it, you know, or what. But then there are other times that I'm more like, yeah, you know, let me try this. Even if I fail, let me try this. But so it's one of those back and forth issues.
Brother Steve.
Yeah, maybe you guys can help me unpack this. And Anji just said spiritual warfare. There is something in that. You said, Preston, something about meeting a standard. I'll be ready when I've met a certain standard. And then I certainly do this. I think we all do. We tend to flip that on other people. Well, when they meet a certain standard, then I will. And the Holy Spirit was saying there's nudging me. There's something spiritual there. And I'm trying to unravel that. And then I think I got it. You guys can tell me what you think. When we do that, when we say, well, I need to meet a certain standard, or someone else needs to meet a certain standard, underneath that is Christ, the standard you met, isn't enough. And that's kind of painful to say out loud.
But you're right on, Brother Steve. You're right on. Jesus paid it all. And that's why when we wait to aspire to certain positions, and I would even go so far, and forgive me, Brother Steve and Brother Gene, I would even aspire, if you're waiting to go to seminary until you're ready to feel equipped to be about the Great Commission, you've gotten it wrong. So, couple points and then we'll close. So let me give you the homework assignment that was going to be the history lesson for this week. So if you feel so engaged and indulged that you would like to be a little prepared for this next week, let me share this with you. So next week, we're going to talk a little bit about, the Freedmen's Bureau. The Freedmen's Bureau. Freedmen''S Bureau. Freedmen's Bureau. We're going to talk a little bit about that in regard to its application to the Emancipation Proclamation. Freedmen's Bureau, we're going to talk about that in relation to the Emancipation Proclamation. And then we might throw a little bit of information out about, say, the Civil Rights Act of 1866 and maybe 1875, I think. 1872. So the Freedmen's Bureau, we're going to talk about that a little bit next week. And I will tell you that it all impacts our discussion and our exchanges over the past several weeks about discipleship. So let me close and then give you some ability to comment as we finish today. You guys, unfortunately, have been annoyed by me teaching with us over the past gazillion years we've been together. You're too familiar with my face and my voice doing this. And let me share this with you so that it makes a kind of sense. I recognize that the Lord's gifted me to be able to do this, but please recognize this is not what I want to do for Jesus. In fact, if I use Steve K's earlier assessment, I would tell you this is probably one of the most frustrating things to do. It less so these days, but it has kept me up at night. It wakes me up early in the morning, and you all know I don't like mornings. So in the morning, I'm wrestling with this. I almost loathe at times doing this. So the question then for you maybe listening to this would be, then why do you do it? Because it doesn't matter sometimes how I feel about it. I need to do it. And I need to do it because the Lord says, and I'll represent this so you see it next week, in Hebrews 5, it says, by now, you should be teachers. And so you're going to get some acquaintance with this when Brother Steve K helps to facilitate our speed dating together. So I had been sitting on the sidelines cheering on my team a whole lot, and somebody went, no, you don't need to be sitting on the bench. You need to be doing something else. I was content to sit on the bench. I like being a question answerer. I like tests. I like that silly academic stuff. I don't want to be the dude putting the lesson plans together. I hate teachers. Well, I mean, I like teachers. I do. But I don't want to be one. And so when some of the things came together in terms of skills, experience, and gifting, this was the tag you're at. And for those of us that have been together, you know I've been doing this with us for quite a while and had the misfortune of being tagged before I got to us. But at times I really don't wish to do this because you might not be aware of this, but there's minimal returns. I had a brother say a short while ago, I'm doing and I'm presenting work for folks to be able to use as information to embolden their Jesus discussions. and they forget that those tools are there. They forget that that information is there. They forget we talked about that 2 weeks ago. Folks, this was something I wrestled with Pastor Bruce back when Pastor Bruce was our pastor, and it's something I wrestle with regularly is, what's the point? What's the point in doing this if it never gets acted on? Well, here's the point. Sometimes you have to do instead of feeling. And this is what the Lord's called me to do. Even if and when I hate it. Even when I think there's no payout. Even when it's not my job. I don't get paid for doing this. And so, in my head, the right thing to do would be let somebody else do it. The right thing is shut up and do it. So let me pause. Your thoughts.
Going back to my consequences thing, I was thinking about, I know I should go out and do the Great Commission, but what if I offend somebody? What if my friends and family don't like me anymore? We almost psych ourselves out before we even get out there. It's like, but what if one person listens? And then I was thinking about what you said and the consequences you are thinking about. And I'm like, I was just thinking, at the beginning, you started out with a fine sandpaper. That's what we're supposed to do. A little bit of friction. Now I feel like you're using that sander with a coarse grade. So thank you.
So Diane, thank you. You have been a wonderful sounding board to say you need to shut up this week. Versus sometimes when you've been able to say, I think you're closer to getting it close to right. And guys, look, it doesn't take companions or mankind giving us the endorsement. You heard what Sherry said. You heard what Steve and what Sarah was saying earlier today. But guess what? Guys, this is why Jesus sent the guys out in pairs. Because sometimes you need accountability. You need to work with somebody who's doing something similar, and both of you can give each other feedback about what stinks today and what you kind of got close. And it may be embarrassing and it may feel put upon, but guys, that's why Jesus showed us and demonstrated how to do this. And so if we wait until we're 60 or 70 years old, then you guys all know, if you've not seen movies where people are asked kind of on their deathbeds, what are your regrets? What are the things you wished you had done? And guys, we don't have to have those kind of lives as Jesus believers. We don't have to have those. Number one, because he paid it all. So it's not about our works, because we can't get it right, but it's about our work for him. That is what builds the confidence, is at the end of the day, looking back at the resume and not going, how much money did I earn in my job today? How efficient was I keeping the company running? Or how pleased would the Lord be with me for the work I did for the kingdom as his ambassador? And guys, that may be a really, really tough stretch. But that's what hopefully we're trying to inject into Interlink Fellowship. That desperation, that sense of importance, that sense of immediacy. Because, guys, folks, we're attending and visiting churches, and that's not what folks are about. They're about the comfort of going to the church and seeing their friends and being in a fun, churchy environment. But there's no sense of immediacy in terms of their being ambassadors. I guess someday the Holy Spirit will go Damascus experience, and that's kind of what everybody's waiting for. But guys, Diane said we know the Great Commission. That's one of the primary things that you kind of learn after you jump the Jesus believing broom. We need to be about the doing, and not because of the doing, but because we love Jesus so much. So, as we close today, and you guys may have some comments, Brother Jerry, time travel expert, going to ask you this next week. Going to pose this to Michaela, going to pose this to Anju, going to pose it to Kathy, right? And then we'll talk a little bit about that Emancipation Proclamation Freedmen's Bureau as it pertains to discipleship. Because sometimes there's a question of, are we really being discipled? My question and answer to you is going to be this. In a Bible teaching church, even if you don't like it, yes, you're being discipled. Sometimes we're waiting for somebody to give us our badge and our title and our marching order and point us where we're supposed to go. But Diane has reminded us we've already been pointed where we're supposed to go. So sometimes the question is better, how and when do I do that? Because, guys, we know the what. That's the Great Commission. Here's the other funny thing, too. Surprisingly, this is one of the things that we know is the why. Here's the why. Jesus said to. What we sometimes don't know is the how, the when, and the where. So, your thoughts as we close. Thank you, guys.
I have a thought/prayer request. This is in regard to E17 and our retreat, but I've been working on, I think the analogy fits almost perfectly. I've been working on finding a church for us to practice, to get in there, right? And those are Bruce's words. Find a place to practice. Are we ready? No. Honestly, when people are asking our questions, one simple question: what do you have to offer? And I'm like, but is this something God is calling us to do? And I know that we are not going to step up and be ready to do this thing until we just dive off the cliff and go for it. Because then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we got a church to go to. Oh my gosh, I got to step up. Oh, we got to do this. We got to do that. We got to do that. And if we sit and we're constantly waiting to be ready to do this E17 thing, it's never going to happen. Now I'm saying that because it fits with what you're saying, but also that's my announcement/prayer request that I was going to have when I was getting up there doing an announcement. So please pray. I got a couple churches that I'm looking at, one I'm actually in dialogue with this about. And just pray that someone will say, you know what? We don't know what this is going to look like exactly, but we're going to go for it. And I think that'll be an awesome thing, for lack of a better word, to have set up before our retreat. And then we're ready to go in and try something and experiment with our gifts. Think of it as a grand experiment. That's all. And so if we fail at an experiment, oh well. What do you learn from it? And then you go on to the next experiment.
You know, I think about Matt and how he came in at a time when we were so defeated. So just having someone come in and walk alongside and bring a different perspective and hope, that's huge. That was huge for us. You know, to just be a sounding board, to throw out ideas. Some might stick, some might not, but just getting a new perspective could be, you know, one of the things we could bring, and just a willingness to serve God in this way. We feel called to do it.
And keep your head to the ground, because ear to the ground, sorry. What's the phrase? Just be on the lookout, okay? And because as I got on the internet and I'm looking at churches and I start calling them up, there's a huge need out there. And when I talked to one church about our story and where we're at, they have more people. It looks like they're doing more, but she said, wow, you guys are really in a good position. This person was discerning enough to recognize what we had gone through, where we're at, and that we're coming up to the starting line, and our numbers are low. Everything looks smaller on the outside, but we're coming up to the starting line of actually doing the things that Jesus has called us to do. It's amazing. And as I'm doing this and I'm calling at different churches, the reason I'm saying be on the lookout, there's a church that closed its doors just last January, not far from us, and I don't think they needed to. And if we had been there, even in our position right now, perhaps they would not have. And so you got people that were probably sitting in the pews that went into other churches to sit in the pews. When we could have been, perhaps, don't know this, but perhaps instrumental and used by God to get them on mission doing something. And if they get to the exact same position that we are, and they're asking the same questions and answering the same way we are right now, it's 10 times better than where they were. I think.
Yep, can't follow that up. Need to pray because that's what it's all about, gang.